The first recorded use of the term call center was just 35 years ago, in 1983. However, the history of call centers dates back further than that. The first use of a call center-like environment was in the mid-1900s, but we can go further still. The call center story starts, arguably, over 100 years ago, with technology invented in the late 19th century. With call centers still growing in popularity and use, cheaper labor costs prompted businesses to move their call centers away from the UK and into countries such as India, the Philippines, and South Africa. But this wouldn't last long. While call centers soaked up the sun offshore, customers started complaining about difficulty understanding agents over the phone due to language barriers. Businesses with offshore call centers also started to get negative attention from the media. And that gave birth to a new kind of scam, the call center scams, as shown in the multitude of content in the popular culture. In early October 2016, over 600 fake call center employees in India were apprehended under suspicion of performing fake or scam calls to US taxpayers while impersonating government employees. Authorities had been conducting checks on scammers after receiving complaints from US citizens about fraudulent activities. Companies are being investigated for malpractice against various corporations. All these companies carried out illegal activities in India. Call centers impersonated US Internal Revenue Service officers, where a call center agent, using an American accent, name, and badge number, calls a target via voice over IP, stating that they allegedly owed in unpaid taxes, which could lead to consequences like losing their house, job, or face a prison term. Once a fine was negotiated, the agent asked them to pay using international cards, iTunes gift cards, or through wire services such as MoneyGram, while others asked for bank account details. Scammers also impersonated US Citizen and Immigration Services (USCIS) officers and deceived residents by misleading them into believing that they would be deported unless they paid a fine for alleged issues with USCIS paperwork. India-based call centers conned US citizens by misleading them into considering that the callers were loan officers and that US citizens were entitled to a fabricated payday loan. They would then collect an upfront worthiness fee to prove their ability to reimburse the loan. It should be noted that these centers, though termed as call centers, are not involved in providing any sourcing services, but are rather similar to the internet companies that con people. This is not the first time that companies in India have been accused of perpetrating the telephone impersonation scam.
The scammers were able to get their targets' data from groups that sell them illicitly in bulk. In the US, the primary participants were domestic managers, runners, and payment processors. Domestic managers guided the activities of runners and supplied them with resources, including vehicles and credit cards to be used to pay business expenses. Runners acquired provisional GPR cards, general purpose reloadable, and then sent the information about these cards to the scammers who were working in call centers in India. When they reached the disbursement portion of the scam, the funds would be transferred from the victim to the runner's GPR card. Runners would then recover the funds and send them via Western Union or MoneyGram using fabricated identification documents. The scammers were able to get their targets' data from groups that sell them illicitly in bulk. In the US, the primary participants were domestic managers, runners, and payment processors. Domestic managers guided the activities of runners and supplied them with resources, including vehicles and credit cards to be used to pay business expenses. Runners acquired provisional GPR cards, general purpose reloadable, and then sent the information about these cards to the scammers who were working in call centers in India. When they reached the disbursement portion of the scam, the funds would be transferred from the victim to the runner's GPR card. Runners would then recover the funds and send them via Western Union or MoneyGram using fabricated identification documents. as the call centers are offering some big money to work in the call centers with the bare minimum amount of education. This is leading the youths of today's generation wayward, leading them away from the path of higher education. And this, in turn, causes the youth of today's world to move away from a path of higher education and enlightenment and causes them to pursue the money, which can range to the upper range of a lakh per month, and dive headfast in the world of easy money. And this in turn is pushing them into darker pursuits like drugs and gambling and the rest. This is causing the bright and young to start pursuing a career as a criminal activity. And though the law enforcement officials are trying to put a stop to this, every day these call center owners are hiring more and more young candidates every day. And so the law enforcers are taking up some huge steps every day to stop them. US law enforcement agencies first uncovered such a scam in October 2013 and exposed various fake entities in December 2013. India's trade association National Association of Software and Services Companies stated that it is proactively creating steps and recommendations with industry members and the government to deal with these illegal activities. It is also coming up with specifications with the US Federal Trade Commission by conducting training sessions to better tackle the situation to ensure the long-term health of the industry. Also, our local government is incessantly spreading awareness on how we can deal with such scams if it happens to us. With the rise in such frauds in the country, it is wise to be cautious. Proper due diligence must be conducted before partnering with call centers or choosing new suppliers. Care should be taken to validate the credibility of the centers, and it is advisable to bring in outside experts such as external accountants or public relations firms when selecting important partners. It is best to visit the location, meet the shortlisted suppliers in person, and then take the final decision, especially if the company is very small or is not publicly known. Monetary transactions should be dealt with utmost vigilance. Business leaders could inquire with their suppliers as to how they are managing an atmosphere of increased suspicion among customers. Additionally, it is essential to make sure that the vendor is not outsourcing parts of the work further to a third party.
As the world is evolving into a smarter world, so are these criminals and scammers. So, it is advised that you stay vigilant whenever calls like these light up your screen. Also, make sure not to share any personal information with anyone over the phone. And if you feel that you have been duped in any way, please take help from your local law enforcement officials. And stay safe.